guys, welcome back to the channel for my review of Season 11, Episode 8, Snaketastrophy. This episode is from the point of view of NGTV, and we have Dan Vapid, who is the anchor and connects to the reporters. Then we have Fred Finley, who's one of the reporters, brags a lot and constantly adds awards to himself, and he interviews some people in a pyro snake. Then we have a commercial break in which we see Dareth advertising his karaoke bar, and then also we see Gail Gossip, who is tired of reporting boring stories, and she and Vinny, that's right, Vinny is in this episode with a pretty good recast too, and so they decide to go report on Aspheera, and Aspheera discovers that the scroll forbidden spinjitzu is in the city, and then she catches Gail Gossip and Vinny, and they get captured. Then the ninja return to the city and rescue Fred finally, and then Aspheera takes control of the cameras and makes a broadcast to the entire city. So this entire episode is basically satire of real news, and I think that's very clever, honestly. Some of the humor in this episode is also kind of cool, too, like how Fred finally constantly adds words to himself, and Dareth's advertisement was the only one out of, I think, 3 advertisements. I found that one funny, I didn't find the other 2 really funny. So yeah, I also thought that Gail Gossip and Vinny are pretty cool, too. As I mentioned earlier, I like Vinny's recast, and I think his new voice actor is pretty good, too. I liked his old voice, too. I think he was voiced by Vincent Tong, who voices Kai in Season 10. But yeah, anyways, Gail Gossip is cool, too. Seeing more of Aspheera was also nice as well. And I liked her broadcast to the city. I liked the line, "Am I doing this right?" A nice reminder that she's from many centuries ago and does not know how to use modern-day technology. Vinny was also pretty cool in this episode too. I liked him in Season 10 and he was a really cool side character. Just very easygoing, casual, a relatable guy. And he still has that same charm in Season 11. I liked how the episode was especially from his perspective too, seeing as we don't even see his face, so the episode is from his first person, at least some parts of the episode, I mean. And I love how he gives away the museum's location while Gail Gossip is basically jeopardizing both of their lives. I found that to be pretty funny, and while Gail Gossip is... And yeah, Gail Gossip is pretty cool in this episode too. I like her as a character, and she's pretty interesting. She's a nice reporter character who's been there for a long time, been there since Season 1 or Season 2. So yeah, I think the reporters that we've seen before, like Vinny and Gail Gossip, were pretty cool. Fred finally was okay, I guess. I mean, he was kind of funny, and the rivalry between him and Gail Gossip was okay, I guess. And there's nothing too much to say with Dan Vapid, because he honestly wasn't really bringing that much to the table. So yeah, this episode did have its own issues. We'll talk about the advertisements first. The only advertisement I did find to be funny, as I already mentioned, was the Dareth advertisement, as it emphasized the fact that he is pretty much a wannabe, and I loved how he had that cardboard spinjitzu. The other 2 ads, I gotta say, were really not that funny, and didn't really add that much to the story at all. I guess the Dareth one was funny, but the other 2 were definitely a no in my opinion. And on top of that, I feel like some of the parts of this episode definitely were very weak, such as the interview with the city council members. That part, I guess, was another part of the satirical approach, and it was clever, but it did feel very, very short, and it didn't really feel like it added anything to the story at all. Honestly, it couldn't have been in that episode, and it didn't need to be in that episode, so I didn't really think that part was very interesting at all. So let's talk about Aspheera's monologue next, because there is a part that really bothers me about it, and that is specifically the ending. I don't mind her getting cut off, and that is another approach at comedy that just completely failed in my opinion. Her getting close to the camera, screaming burn, is not funny, and cutting her off at that moment is not funny either. I mean, you want to cut her off, that's fine. Turning yet another serious moment into a joke is getting tiresome and would be a con on its own, but whatever, do what they want. But, I mean, seriously, during the burn segment, did that really need to happen then? And even Dan Vapid smiling away after hearing that broadcast where she threatens to burn down the entire city? Really, some of the jokes just feel really, really forced in this episode. And that's just the general problem with the season itself, too, as well as this episode, too. So, yeah, I mean, the jokes don't really do that much in this episode. And I feel like some parts of this episode really needn't have existed in the first place. So my final thoughts on this episode. Plot of this episode, this is a side episode. It focuses on the NGTV and their perspective, so I thought that in itself was kind of cool. Seeing more of these different perspectives is always a refreshing take on the episode, so that is definitely something that does go well with me. And also how the entire episode is basically satire, I also liked. In terms of characters, I've already mentioned that I like Gail Gossip and Vinny, and they were, I think, the main characters that really stood out to me. Dan Vapid is a pretty boring character, and Fred finally is okay, I guess. So yeah, now moving on to the action of this episode. The action of this episode is actually not bad because, unlike the News Never Sleeps, it didn't feel entirely forced in this episode. Because that's what news reporters do, they're at eventful sites. So that did make sense. It also played well with Gail Gossip's investigative nature. And also, I think, again, Vinny was also pretty cool this episode too, and he was one of the only aspects that I found funny. And again, going back to emotion, when you had Aspheera's monologue, which is going really well, and just like in the last episode, they turn an actual serious scene into a joke, and that is just a big no for me. If you want to make that actual character seem intimidating or seem motivational, you don't just ruin it with the joke, and that is something that definitely feels like a big problem in these two episodes. So yeah, anyways, that's going to be all for my final thoughts. In the end, I'm going to give this episode a 6.5 out of 10. To be honest, it wasn't that good, and it just felt like a below average episode in my opinion. I liked how it was another take on the invasion of Ninjago, and that was cool and all. I think Gail Gossip and Vinny were also interesting in this episode too, but parts of this episode just didn't really cut it. Some of the humor did not feel natural as well, and some of the humor just wasn't good either. So that's going to be all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone ever you know, and leave your own thoughts on episode 8, Snaketastrophy. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.